Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Town Manager Download, a podcast about local government and the town of Shrewsbury. I'm Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager of the town of Shrewsbury, and as always, I'm joined by the Communications Coordinator, Taylor Galusha. In today's episode, we are going to be joined by Mark Serra, the Executive Director of Shrewsbury Media Connection, to talk about SMC and the importance of public access television groups and other groups like SMC existing in communities across the Commonwealth and the country. What's going on, Taylor?
It's another Monday. Woke up with no power. My car's leaking
Storm
rain
roll
again.
through. Yep.
Yeah. Just a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
That's a Monday.
Yeah.
That's all right.
We get through it.
Good weekend?
Yep. I went, visited my family, saw all my home friends, which was nice. Some of us went and got our nails done. Some of us went and got really good pizza because Connecticut's known for really good pizza.
Good.
So we gotta always do that when I'm home. So, yeah, can't
That's awesome.
complain. Happy to
Good
spend
stuff.
time with everyone during this season. So,
The season.
the season.
Good. Speaking of the season, I went to watch my girls perform the Nutcracker. Their dance company did this weekend, which was good. Sold out
awesome.
show on Saturday night, which Saturday afternoon, I guess, was a lot of fun. Hit up a new restaurant afterwards, a Mexican restaurant called Condesa. It was awesome. So
It's awesome.
good weekend.
Yeah.
Although it went really quick. Holidays are right around the
I
corner.
was gonna say we're already like halfway through December,
That's
which
right.
is insane because I feel like it was October like 2 days ago.
I feel the same way.
Like, I don't think November even happened,
Yeah.
but here we are, and I'm running out of time.
Yep. The countdown is on.
Oh, my sister's coming home
Oh, good.
from Ireland for
She just left.
holidays. Yeah, she'll be going back after, but we're all really excited to have her come home.
Awesome.
And see her and learn about whatever she's been up to over there.
Awesome. That's great
So,
news.
good news all around.
So what's up in the shrew?
We got a few things going on, some opportunities for people to get more involved with the personnel board and the 300th anniversary committee, or both have vacancies that people can apply for if they're
Great.
interested from our website on
Yeah,
the board
two
and
different-
committee vacancy pages.
Yeah, two different opportunities, huh?
Yeah, two
kind of
very
a big
different.
spectrum.
Yeah, so the 300th anniversary committee has 9 open seats to like kind of kick off the committee and get it rolling. And then the personnel board has 1 vacancy. And the third thing that's really great volunteer program is the Yahoo program. I believe it's the Young Adults Helping Out Others program that's going to be run through the Council on Aging. And they're just having 2 informational sessions on the program in January on the 16th and the 20th. So people can find more information about that.
Great.
If you're a young adult in the community who wants to get more involved, it's all on the town website. So
That's great.
good time to get involved.
A little behind the scenes on the 300th anniversary committee.
Yes.
The 300th anniversary of the town is 2027, and there's 9 seats that are available, as Taylor mentioned, but we do expect a very high level of interest because it's probably one of the most fun committees that we've set up, at least in the recent past. And I know the concept behind the operation of the committee would be to name those 9 members, but then expect a lot more volunteers to really
To
help.
bring it all
Yeah,
together.
do a lot of work that's going to be needed over the short time period until we get to the 300th. A lot of cities and towns will be interested to see how this committee leads us, but a lot of cities and towns have not held a single event. They've done like a year-long celebration or a couple months. So it's interesting that our 296th will be just the end of this week on December 15th.
I was going to say this is like our Shrewsbury birthday episode.
It is, yeah.
We brought hats.
So no hats. We should have. But yeah, so I guess the moral of the story is if you don't get selected to be on the formal committee, there'll be plenty of opportunities for people to
Help
help
be
and
involved.
contribute. So yeah, that's
The
great.
village.
So I feel like we have maybe a little bit of a more in-depth or longer episode today to talk about Shrewsbury Media Connection. It's a couple of firsts for the Town Manager Download. This will be our first non-official town employee that that joins us today. So we're going to have Mark Serra, the Executive Director of Shrewsbury Media Connection. We'll just provide a little bit of overview on the connection between the town and Shrewsbury Media Connection, because it's an incredible value and asset that's provided to the community. And then we'll bring Mark on to dive into some of the more contextual details associated with running a program like SMC. So first of all, the Town Manager Download wouldn't exist without Shrewsbury Media Connection. So we always have to thank Mark and Liz and the entire team that really help us be able to get our media content both recorded and sent out to the world. It means a lot to us to be able to do this. And, really that's the target of Shrewsbury Media Connection. It is to support access to local government and community-related activities and media content. And the model has been in place, since the establishment of cable franchises across New England and across the country. So they are a group that's solely dedicated to, both developing, supporting, and distributing media content for the betterment, transparency, and access for all residents of Shrewsbury and any interested parties. That's one of the things I'm excited to talk to Mark about. It's really the evolution, right? Yeah. Cable was created within the not so distant path, and we're already fast forwarding and seemingly getting beyond it. But SMC still has this huge role to play, and I'm interested to think about the future and talk to him about the future. So from the evolution that has led us here today and incorporating a podcast into what it is that they do to support the community to, what it looked like in the beginning. And we know Mark wasn't here then, but, it's such a strong legacy part of our community that I look forward to talking to him about it. So some nuts and bolts.
Yeah, where do we want to start? I think it's so much. Where do we want to start?
Yeah, so I think some nuts and bolts. So under the Massachusetts general laws and the federal laws associated with cable and communications, that local communities actually have to provide license agreements for anyone to have a cable operation within them. So in Shrewsbury, that's the select board. They're the franchise issuing entity, yep. And they currently provide that license to Selco. I think we may have even talked about it last year that we signed a 5-year franchise agreement with Selco last March. So Selco has been the only cable provider in the community, and it's a part of the town itself. Yep. But any license that we issue, both in Shrewsbury or across the Commonwealth and across the country, are all non-exclusive cable licenses, meaning that another provider could come in and provide those same services. And of course, many folks know what that looks like. When it's a cable-based operation, they may see, two large providers like a Xfinity and a Verizon both operating within the same community. So there's no exclusivity, and there's no exclusivity just because we have Selco either. So again, this is the cable service provision that ultimately provides the funding and gets us to a point where entities like Shrewsbury Media Connection operate. So with that ability to operate within the community, we set out in that agreement a certain cable franchise licensing fee that's actually passed along to all subscribers that bring in the revenue associated with that. And that's that real direct connection that provides funding for what is done not only in this studio, but out in the community and recording and transmitting public meetings and community events and the whole gamut of the things that folks get to see through the good work of SMC. Part of what a cable franchise operator is also obligated to do beyond that fee is actually provide 3 channels that are dedicated to transmit the materials that are generated by whoever is the provider within the community. So the cable operator, in our case Selco, makes available 3 channels, one that's dedicated for general public content development, one that's generated for government programming, and you think of your select board meeting and finance committee meetings, those happen through that channel. And then educational purposes through the public school systems. It gives them the opportunity to create content, provide educational opportunities, host their meetings and use that means. So those three channels are how the content is shared. It's set aside by the cable operator, but the content and the creative work is supported through operators like Shrewsbury Media Connection. They're known as PEG access providers, or public education government access providers. In SMC's case, they're a private nonprofit entity, formerly were actually a part of Selco, but their sole purpose is to provide these services. They operate the cable studio, they own all the equipment, and they operate this as a business within the community and provide great value to us. So when we receive that cable franchise fee from the cable provider, comes into the town and then is passed along in whole to Shrewsbury Media Connection for all the expenses that are associated with their programs. So it's an enterprise fund for those who are following along when we talked about finances. So those fees can't be used for anything else except for the operation of the PEG access provider. And it really provides an incredible value and asset to the community for us to have all of our public meetings distributed and available. And it's really, in my opinion, the work of democracy, right? We're able to get information out and be very transparent because of the hard, dedicated work of SMC and all the employees that work here. So they, of course, record all those meetings and share those meetings with the public, select board, finance committee, school committee, annual special town meetings, so many other boards and committees, council on aging, Selco themselves. So not only do I get to be here in the studio, I'm also someone that subscribes and watches most everything on their YouTube. It's an incredible asset to residents and so many others. So,
and they really go kind of above and beyond with it as well, with like, not only do they have the access through like the TVs that people have at their house that have cable, but they have their website, shrewsburymediaconnection.org, that you can just live stream the meetings, which is what I do since I do not live in town from anywhere. They live stream them to Facebook. Like you said, they put them on their YouTube channel after. They have the website video archive like on that webpage that you can live stream them on. I feel like we both work, or one side of the like SMC coin better than I do, like the more cable franchise side. With my work as a communications coordinator, I've gotten the chance to get to know like Mark and Liz very well, just being great creative partners when I need to reach out to Mark for things. And like you said, they produce the Town Manager Download, but also various informational videos. Like we did one with them for the strategic plan, the climate action plan. I'll just send Mark emails and be like, hey, can you take these graphics and help me kind of bring this video idea to life? So I've always appreciated his like partnership on that end of things. He's been a good mentor for me. So I feel lucky that we get to have him on a show. Found out before it's his first time being on an SMC show, but he's not behind the camera. Yeah, so
that? Who knew? I
didn't know idea. I feel special though. So gets to bring to life a lot of great community content and stuff. So we're lucky to have that great team.
Yeah, there has been a variety of community related content that I'm sure Mark has some interesting stories to share. About the things that he's seen produced here and around the community. I know there was a time when maybe that you still can get access to the equipment and take it other places to be able to see what's going on. So, I certainly, my core connections to it is, being in this studio and being able to answer folks' questions and be more transparent through the download and other means, and joining other people's show and I think we have a rather vibrant studio, and that's because there's an inviting environment that you find here and working with SMC, and you're always supported. So I completely echo what you're saying, and that they're a great communications partner to the town and sharing the information about what it is that we do on a day-to-day basis and the programs that we're offering. So I guess without further ado, we will welcome to the set
for the first time ever.
Mark Serra, the Executive Director of Shrewsbury Media Connection.
Cue the applause.
So welcome to the set formally, to the Town Manager Download.
Thank
Mark.
you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So our first non-town employee guest. So we're really lucky to have you, and thanks for participating.
Excited to be here.
As you've seen through the glass in this room, there's a certain format that we'll go through, and we just wanted to learn a little bit more about you. How did you end up in your current position as the Executive Director of Shrewsbury Media Connection? And we'll take it from there.
Well, so my affiliation with SMC goes back to when it was known as SPAC. And so I showed up in the fall of 1995. Is that before you were born? Okay, so I often joke that I've been here too long, but the truth is there's no place else I'd rather be. So that started in 95, senior from Fitchburg State College. And in your senior year, you have to do a full-time internship before you can graduate. And it's a rush to get your demo reel together and your portfolio, and everyone wants the best spots in LA and New York and all that stuff. And I had a 2-year-old. And so going out of state for a semester wasn't an option. And even the idea of going to Boston, it was like I didn't have reliable transportation. And because it's an unpaid internship, I'm like, I can't afford to travel back and forth. So I went to my mentor at the college, who was this amazing man, Bob Wilson. And I worked for Bob the whole time I was there. So he wasn't a professor. He ran what was called Image Systems. And we were responsible for all the equipment of the whole college. And, AV equipment, check-in, check-out, repair, and stuff like that. So I really trusted Bob, and I went to him and I said, I got to find an internship that's like hyper local to Central Mass. And he was this big dude from Nebraska, talked like a cowboy, and he said, you got to go to SPAC. And I was like, what, like Spags? And he was like, no, not Spags. And he's like, well, it's actually up the street from Spags. And he said, yeah, it's SPAC. And so I looked into it a little bit. And at that time, in my mind, it was like, you think of like Wayne's World as being public access. And so I'll admit, day one, I wasn't super stoked. But, I came here. It was really my only option at that point. But just within a matter of days of being here, fell in love with the staff. Fell in love with the people who were coming in, fell in love with the mission of what public access is, and more importantly though, fell in love with the community. So, and I feel fortunate to have been here during those years, or that year, because, I got to meet Mr. Carney, Don Gray, Ed Holland, all these, legends. So then when the internship was over, there was no position here, which I was really sad about. So I ended up taking a position in Grafton at their TV studio, and ran Grafton for 2 years, that was like June of 96, I guess, to 98. But when I left here, they had told me, if there's ever a position, we'll definitely call you. And later on in 96, I did receive a call that they were opening up the second channel, which was the educational channel. And there was going to be an opportunity for a director of that channel. And was I interested? And of course I was. We went through this whole conversation, and I was getting really excited. And at the end of the conversation, the manager here, his name was Stan then, Stan says, well, just so you know, it's not a full-time position, and it doesn't have benefits. So I was crushed because I really wanted to be here. But at that time in Grafton, there was a part-timer who would float around and go to different studios. And if I was out sick, she would fill in. And that was Elizabeth Poplowski, who back then was Desjardins. And so I called Stan and mentioned Liz to him, and then mentioned the position to Liz and encouraged her to apply. And she applied. Of course, they loved her. So she got hired in 96. And I was very envious of her. But I was having fun in Grafton. That was an experience all on its own. Someday I may have to write a book about what those 2 years in Grafton were like, because you wouldn't believe it. It'd make a great movie. I know
some of those characters, so I kind of do.
You probably do. The ones you're probably speaking of came in under me. I don't want to get into the graft and stuff, but it was a hoot. So anyways, 1998 rolls around, get another phone call that Stan, the director, had left. Bill Ney, who was the access coordinator, had moved up to manager, and Bill's position was open. So in September of 98, was hired here in that full-time position, and was in that position until 2015. Bill Ney left. Michael Hale offered me that position, which is, I went back and I was looking and I was like, what actually transpired during that time? So on the day that I was asked if I was interested in that position, I was also told what the future looked like. And did I still want the position?
And that, of course, was transitioning.
Yes, he told me that there would be a transitioning happening, and would I still be interested? And I really was. I wanted to see it through. I really still do love this place. So to me, it was a no-brainer. So in 2015, I became the general manager. And then, I know we're going to talk about it later, but then in 2020, became the executive director.
Interesting.
And then the world shut down.
And then the world shut down. Yeah, that was unfortunate. I mean, we opened, like I say, we'll talk about it a little bit later, I guess, but, we opened the door January 2nd as a new nonprofit entity, very excited to hit the ground running. And then March 13th, I think it was, closed the door for, 4 or 5 months. And yeah, that was very unfortunate for everyone. But for us, I feel like the timing was even more unfortunate.
Your history really intertwines with the development of SMC from SPAC to SMC, it sounds like. Do you have a good recollection of the years since you've been here before you till now?
Even before me. I mean, I know that 1983 is when things really started off. And this whole idea of, Selco started. I think Selco started their cable franchise around the 1980.
Yeah.
But by the time everything was built out and everything, it took years. So in 1983, yes, a group of residents came forward and were interested in starting the public access channel. And when it started, it was intended to be a nonprofit. But what had happened was that because it was this upstart organization and there was actually a lot of money on the table, Selco didn't feel comfortable handing money over to this new entity. And I think, at the time, not that they didn't trust it, but I think they didn't know if it was going to last, and it was new, right? Yeah. So they came up with an agreement in which Selco would hold on to the money. They would operate as a nonprofit and basically submit invoices to Selco to get paid. Well, the IRS didn't like that, and they looked at it and said, if you're not in charge of your own finances, you're not an independent organization. And after much back and forth, Selco decided that they would give them another opportunity and said, we'll still hold on to the money. We'll give you less. I think it ended up with 2.5%, but we'll give you 2 full-time employees and 2.5% that you can use for capital. And that's how the department became a department of Selco at that time. So then the channels themselves kicked off 1987, I think was the first, by the time this, they had bought equipment, the technology was in place. So somewhere we have a video of special town meeting in, I want to say it's February of 87.
Really?
We believe that was the first live broadcast. Not necessarily the first broadcast, but the first live broadcast.
Okay.
That's pretty interesting. You see a very young Kevin Byrne up at the podium. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, Mark, public education, government access programming is really, I think, seen today as it's almost a given, right? I mean, I think people have become very accustomed to having this opportunity. You're really providing access to information that many people, for a variety of reasons, whether it's convenience or being differently abled or whatever it is, wouldn't otherwise have access to. And that's really the heart of democracy for me, getting to see government in action and holding them accountable. But nothing stands still in time, right? And SMC certainly hasn't. So, you talked about how things started and built from the 80s, but I want to fast forward to kind of this digital transformation of, let's just say, the last 10 years, if I can characterize it, and talk about those changes that you've made of going from this, legacy cable system and thought of beaming into everyone's home through these physical means to where we are today with the internet and digital content and all those things and kind of keeping up. So
Sure.
any general thoughts on that, or we can
Yeah,
dive
so
specifically?
Let me take a small step back then.
Okay.
So, like I said, public access, very late 80s, maybe 87. The educational channel came on board in 1996.
Okay.
And so at that time, we had 2 channels. We were doing some government coverage, selectmen's meeting. Believe it or not, I think Lake Quinsigamon Commission was one of the first government meetings that was actually broadcast, in which they got thrown out. It ended up,
Oh, so this
Yeah,
is
the police had
interesting.
to
So
come.
the government access channel is the newest.
yeah,
Is it
so
the-
that's what I wanted to lead into. That came on board as a full-time channel in 2000.
Okay.
So before that, we were, doing very few. Like I say, I know we were doing selectmen's meetings, occasional finance committee, Lake Quinsigamon.
Scandalous like Quinsigamon.
Yeah, so the Lake Quinsigamon, there's some great articles that I have from the old TNG that, the police chief threw them out of the meeting because Lori Hogan, who went on to become a selectman, showed up with a camera and started filming this meeting. And
Wow.
yeah.
Yep.
And I've heard that in other towns too. I mean, government access always seemed to be the one that I want to say upset people the most. Like everyone embraced public access, educational access was fine, but government, a lot of governments were resistant, and
Well, I guess my comments were very naive at the beginning because it's been a part of my career in every place that I've ever
Yeah.
worked, and just whether that was doing my internship in the city of Morgantown, West Virginia, or in New Jersey, like it's omnipresent. And I think that when you're in the local government sector, that you are going to be on TV in these very public settings conducting your formal business. So
And
it's interesting.
we took a lot of flack when starting the government channel from various forces in town who didn't necessarily support it. But eventually they relinquished. We got the channel. And then the biggest change, I guess, for us would have been 2012. We started looking at to going high definition. And my predecessor, Bill, and the rest of the staff, we knew for a fact it was like, if you're going to transition to high definition to your customers, like we need to be on that tier. Because remember how it used to be, you still have separate tiers. Once you went to the HD channels, you were never going back.
Right.
And we said, it's going to turn us into a dinosaur. Like we need to be high definition. And of course, there was a cost associated with that. And Selco wasn't necessarily against it, but what they did was they told us they would give us a certain amount of bandwidth. And I'm not even sure exactly what it means, but I think it was 38 QAM is how it was worded. And at that time, you could only broadcast 2 channels on that. So we were really trying to figure out which 2 channels do we put in HD, which one do we sacrifice. And then we found this vendor called Telview who was willing to work with us, and they were brand new. And they took it as a challenge and said, we think we can create a machine that will give you 3 channels on that 38 QAM. And they moved forward with that. So we started testing it out in 2012. And in 2013, we flipped the switch to HD and never looked back. And I laugh with the Telview thing because a few months ago, that server that we bought in 2012 actually started going bad and we had to replace it. And when their tech group opened it up, they called and they said, do you realize that you have server number 1?
Really?
And we said, yes, like we knew that, but their staff was so new that they didn't know that we were the first. Like they literally developed this product around us.
Wow.
And now they're one of the leaders in that sector. But we like to remind them, yeah, it's thanks to us.
Yeah.
So what I find fascinating when you talk about these other towns across the country, and by the way, like the whole idea of PEG access is really strong in the Northeast, but has really died out across the country. They changed laws as to how they handle franchise fees and things like that. So it's really dwindling, especially the Midwest. So there's some hot pockets on the West Coast. Midwest is really kind of like a PEG desert now.
Interesting.
And then when you get into the Northeast, and especially Massachusetts, like we are the leaders, Massachusetts, in this area. It's still very strong. Nobody's closed the doors yet. Things have certainly changed, but the state hasn't changed the financing and the franchise fee. So we're still here and still strong. But that's not the case across the country.
Interesting. So diving into that continued transformation. So you talk about high def, but then we're really talking about which is interesting to your comments about funding and the door still be open. We're evolving into an internet-based service, and internet service providers and cable operators in most cases are one and the same, but the internet service provision does not fall under the rules of cable operations.
Correct.
There's this whole FCC Title II discussion that's going on out there about whether it's an information source or communications means.
Yep.
But basically, from a financial perspective, SMC is not funded in any way by the internet fee. It's 100% that video product that is through the cable system. So let's stay with the technology for now. But SMC has evolved beyond Cellco in your 3 PEG access channels. So where else are you, and how do you make that work?
Well, so what we saw was that, and I don't know the reason why, but Shrewsbury, if you look at the state puts out a PowerPoint at the end of every year and talks about, how many cable customers are in each town and the number change and everything. Shrewsbury is losing cable customers at the fastest rate in the state. Don't know why that is, but, we're down well over 50% now of cable customers. So we knew that more than half of our audience couldn't see us anymore. And to us, it was important to still get that message out there. And I feel, especially on the government side, it was like, just because you don't have cable, you should still, in my opinion, have access to a meeting. And I know they can come to you and get minutes and all that stuff, but we felt it was still an important service to have. So you had to, at that point, transition to putting your content somewhere online. So, we do have some stuff on our website. We have definitely live streaming on the website, but being able to host all the content on our website is cost prohibitive. So we transitioned to YouTube. And so since 2018, every piece of content we create gets put on YouTube. Before that, we have some scattered stuff, but we really made that decision in 2018. We saw that, when you looked at the numbers, it was just obvious that people couldn't see us on cable because there was only, a few thousand cable customers. So being able to live stream, that's when we started looking into getting an app, which that didn't come about until about 2020. But now, we do have an app that you can download for mobile devices, Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV. And in a way, it's I watch so much of our government stuff from home now. It's kind of an addiction. I think my wife is sick of it, although she loves the planning board. If planning board's on, she'll sit and watch. School committee, she's like, no, we don't have kids. I just can't. But, I don't live in town. And for years, it was impossible to see something. Even if there was an issue, you'd have to wait for a resident to contact you or Cellco and say, oh, there's an issue with your channel. Now we can jump right on and look on the various apps. And so we have analytics, like we cannot see how many cable customers are watching us, but we can look online and, we don't see exactly who, you just see numbers and regions of where they're coming from. And, we estimate that like 75% of all of our viewership is online now. They're live streaming, they're watching on YouTube. We approach 100,000 streams each year on YouTube. Yeah, it is. But, it does beg this question of, well, if you're not paying for it, should you still be able to see it? So for right now, our feeling, SMC, is yes, you should. There are other towns, though, that are starting to put stuff behind firewalls.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Foxborough's, I think it's Foxborough, maybe Attleboro, starting to put it behind a firewall and charging for it. And we hope that we don't have to go down that road, but it is something in the future that may have to be. And if I could, talking about high definition, we're still unique in that sense. Like we were actually the first east of the Mississippi River. There was one other entity somewhere in Texas that was doing high definition, like right around the time we were, 2011 or 12, but nobody east of the Mississippi.
Wow.
Yeah, right. You think big cities, Manhattan, and Brooklyn, New York, like their access centers are huge. No, not high definition. The cable providers have always pushed back against that because it's bandwidth. They don't want to give away bandwidth to public access. So that made us very unique. We still might be, I'd have to look, but we still might be the only PEG provider in the country that has 3 HD channels. So even as you start to approach Boston, Comcast, Verizon, RCN, they were offering like 1, maybe 2 channels in a franchise agreement. But it's like, we've had 3. since 2013, running 24/7. So we're very proud of that. And
It should be.
yeah,
I didn't realize that. It's very interesting.
well, that's why I like to bring it up because
Yep.
there was it took all parties. Selco had to finally give in, and they did, and now they helped us, and they're huge. I mean, our technology is still here in the same building as theirs. We share the same head end. So if I do have an issue that's beyond me, I can reach out to their techs, and so it's been a great partnership.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something to underscore, and I'm learning a lot more actually just as we're talking here, Mark, of the benefits of having those services provided under the same roof, as an entity of the town through Selco, and I've been in other communities where, that was with a third party for-profit provider, and it wasn't that same type of relationship. It was roll up your sleeves negotiations to get an agreement in place, and while you always struck an agreement, it wasn't necessarily always the most forward thinking in the public interest, but I think that's what's been able to be provided here with the partnership of SMC and Selco
And what-
being the cable.
And again, the whole idea of being unique. I mean, now Selco is moving, as you know, to Selco Stream. So it's no longer a traditional cable service. You get a streaming device. Well, we're on that. We're in that lineup.
Yeah.
You can still find us. Other providers across the country, specifically speaking of Spectrum, because they're local, they still pay a franchise fee. So now if you're a new customer of theirs, you can't get a cable box. You get a new streaming device. So even they're moving to the streaming. But they don't include PEG access in any of their towns. So, once they come in and switch you over to stream, you're gone. Like those customers never see you again. But what I find interesting is that they still pay a franchise fee. So they'll still pay, whatever the percentage is for each customer that takes their streaming product. But they have no interest in putting PEG access on their streaming products. So again, what makes us unique is that, yes, we moved over to a streaming service. We're on there. You can still find us, and we're proud of that.
Yeah.
You keep evolving and changing to keep up with the times. It's super important because it is essential to our mission, and your mission is to keep up that transparency and communicating information in new and unique ways.
Yeah.
Whether it's podcasts that you watch on YouTube or on Spotify,
Right.
but people have access to it in all these different means, whether it's live or
Right, for the benefit of the residents.
Yeah.
Always. So we talked about this a little bit, but as we talked about the pandemic and we talked about technology, but I would just say SMC was integral at the table, a partner, as we thought about how we are going to handle our obligations and remain transparent throughout the pandemic. It's certainly, from a local government perspective, definitely in Massachusetts, has the pandemic and access, besides just PEG access channels, has led to legislative changes and open meeting law discussions. So what did you see during that time, Mark? And do you have any other thoughts on how the pandemic shaped your business?
Sure. I mean, well, like I said, for us, the pandemic, unfortunately, occurred 3 months into us launching as a nonprofit. So shutting the doors to the public side was very painful. And that still bothers me because in a sense, we haven't really gone back. A lot of the people who were producing shows here, unfortunately, on the public side, you found other venues. TikTok took off during that time, as did Instagram. So we kind of knew it was hey, we're closing the doors for you guys. You can still submit programs. You can still email them to us if you want. And a few people did that, but some of them kind of just found their way. But the government side, I think we knew from day one that we had to work with you. It was still important for us to get the meetings out there, but your meetings were all on Google Meet now. How are we going to do this? So we spent those first few days of the lockdown trying to figure out the technology that we would need behind that. And for us, we came up with a fairly easy solution. And what you probably don't know is during those first 3 months, every meeting that was broadcast was actually still done from here. For the most part, it was myself, but we'd still have to come in here and be on site for because there was no way of doing it from home yet.
Okay.
Then, as things evolve, technology, there were these opportunities for these companies to create products that would make it easier for you to start doing like a broadcast.
Bridge the issue over.
Right. So, I mean, for us, I think it was June or July by the time we actually had something in place where I could take this little box home and plug it into my Mac laptop at home and push a button and actually broadcast your selectmen's meeting from my office at home.
Wow.
And that little device, it's called a Live View. So not only did we use it for government, but that really changed how we started doing sports coverage. You know, we could never go on the road and be live from Dudley or Sturbridge with a football game. Well, once we bought this little device that at first was intended for government, we started like, well, now the world, you know, it opens up even more. And especially during the pandemic, because in the very beginning, you couldn't even go to the sporting events. It was just athletes only. And, you know, Jay Costa, the AD, let us start going into broadcast. And then they reached a point where it was like only parents could go and you had to have a pass to get in. Well, we knew it was like, well, you know, if 300 or 400 people show up to a football game normally and now you got only 40, like these people still want to see it. So we started, you know, the pandemic caused us to start doing more live sports and going on the road with the teams. And that's been an amazing transformation. And I do enjoy that.
Interesting. I remember SMC also provided or you, Mark, someone within the team, you know, gave us, as silly as it is, recommendations. When you're going to be on camera, here's where a light should be. Here's where your camera should be, and here's how you should think about it. And I remember setting up in the spare bedroom of my house, thinking about those things. Okay, I want to stand up. And it may have made its rounds through the state government because of the state officials that we had on the select board at the time, and you know, become standard at the, you know, under that commissioner's regime.
I thought that whole period of time, like there was so many things that could have gone wrong. And I have to give you guys credit too, because on your end, like for the most part, it was flawless. I mean, when you look at other communities that have, you know, don't want to give any ideas away, but you know what I mean? There's been some real issues with these, you know, virtual meetings, and we didn't have any of that.
The challenge
We
was
just
the
had
cuckoo
Mo.
clock.
Mo's cuckoo clock, right? Yeah, that was, I still laugh about that. Fond memories.
Yeah. So
I remember I had probably only been there for like 2 or 3 months. Like you and Liz came over to town hall. And it was right when they set up the hybrid setup in the selectmen's room. And I remember we were like running back and forth between the selectmen's room and conference room.
Trying to test it and get it to work.
But that's been like really great for us too, like to be able to have, especially when we did shut down again in the winter of 2021 going into 2022, to be able to have like the attorneys that needed to be there for like licensing stuff, they could just Google Meet in, or if people got sick, like they could Google Meet in. We're able to keep up like kind of that hybrid setup in there. But I do laugh about that, just going back and forth, like my camera.
I'm still kind of shocked at communities that aren't back in person.
right there, yep.
There's a number of them.
Committees and boards, yep.
I remember because we were nervous. I mean, I think it was school committee. School committee was definitely the first meeting that came back during the pandemic, and that was like August, I want to say, or very early August, or maybe the last week in July. And you know, there's no lie. Like that first meeting, we were kind of like, oh, I can't believe we're going back in person. This is a little scary.
Yep.
But you know, but now to look, and I'm like, I can't believe there's still some that are fully.
And the first select board meeting back was a dog hearing.
Was it?
It was a dog hearing. It was my second meeting ever.
That's a doozy.
So, Mark, kind of moving away from the government components of PEG access and moving kind of the 180 degrees within that spectrum into the community programming and community member shows. First, just like to hear your thoughts on the importance of people being able to do this, how folks can still do it, and then maybe we'll get into some of your highlights.
Yeah. So, again, going back to when I started in 98, I don't know what it was with that year, but like, you know, before me, they had always advertised, you know, we have free classes, free training, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, people would show up. But that year, 98, the people that came through the door, most of them are still literally here producing shows, which blows my mind. So those first couple of classes that I had back then, is just awesome. Like great people. They had a mission. They were, you know, dedicated to the cause. and still doing it here to this day, which again, that just it blows my mind. You know, talk a little bit about, I don't know if you know Nick Tedesco or the name, but like, you know, so he started Coach's Corner, he started the sports coverage, and he's done well over 2,000 programs. So we're not talking hours. Like if we add up the hours, I mean, it's probably more like 6,000, but over 2,000 programs as a volunteer, you know, and his sports team. I mean, we've been talking about them all year now because they did finally announce that they're going to retire, so to speak. It's kind of funny. It's like retire from a volunteer position. We never gave them a dime. Like we didn't even give them gas money. You know, they wanted to go out there, and they always felt like if they took a penny from anybody that they would then be beholden and can't be themselves. And because you know, we talked about should we go out and find sponsors, and they were like, nope, we're gonna do it as volunteers, and that's gonna be our thing. And so you know, it takes a core dedication to wanting to be a volunteer or to have this idea for a program, and that's where public access, I think, has kind of shifted a little bit, because now, you know, if you come to us and you want to create a program, yeah, we have all the equipment. We will, free of charge, we will train you how to use our equipment. We'll teach you how to edit it. If you want to learn the control room so you could do a studio shoot like this, great, come in, you know, we'll work with you one-on-one. But then the issue for us had always been that, okay, you're finished with your program, you hand it in to us, and then it's like, okay, well, we'll put it on the air Tuesday night. That used to be, like, people used to get excited about that. And now they're like, you know, I want to do it now. And that's kind of where, you know, Instagram, Facebook Live, that kind of stuff has kind of taken over some of that realm. So a lot of the more creative types, you know, we used to have a lot of people that would come here and make movies and stuff and have gone on to actually produce. One of our old producers, he is one of the leading producers with like the Hallmark Channel now and makes, you know, those Christmas movies that you all love. And there were two brothers, the Star brothers, who lived down on South Quinsigamond Ave. And, you know, they were legit filmmakers and got into the professional side and started making real movies and real commercials that you would see. And they had clients like, what is that candle shop that's out in Western Mass?
Oh, Kringle Candle? Or Yankee Candle?
Yankee Candle, yeah. So like Yankee Candle was like their corporate client, and they did all their commercials you'd see on TV. And so there was this great history of just those young creative types who needed an outlet, and public access was their outlet. And we've had some controversial stuff over the years on public access. I mentioned the Star Brothers. They did one episode that just had the phone going off the hook because I shouldn't even say what they did. Never mind. But then one of my favorite stories I'll tell you was that we used to have another show here called Circus TV, and it was a bunch of high school kids, and they did crazy skits and stuff like that. And so there was this one skit where it was the end of the school year, and they took their school books, strapped them on this kid's back with like a leather belt, lit the books on fire, and then he jumps in the pool to put it out, right? So I didn't think anything of it. And, you know, they were all underage, so their parents would have to sign releases. And this goes on the air, and I get this call from this woman, and she was so upset, and rightfully so. I don't blame her. I mean, I didn't love the fact that they did this, but it was like, well, their parents signed off on it. And what I thought was funny, she says, yes, I'm his mother. I signed off, but I had no idea what they did. And she's like, I just saw it on TV. And then I started laughing, and she even came around and we started giggling. But, you know, some other towns have had some real issues with public access programming because it's your First Amendment right. We don't preview anything. You know, we ask you, is there adult content? And the only reason we're asking that is so we know to put it on after 10 o'clock at night. Some towns, though, have had real issues with that. And, you know, luckily for us, if there was an issue that was that severe, for some reason, our producers always would be like, okay, I get it. Like, you know, and they would acquiesce and just be like, you know, put it on once at 2 o'clock in the morning. I get it. So we lucked out in that way. Like we've always had a really good relationship with the community and the volunteers here. But, you know, to go back to that idea, like I say, like Coach's Corner, that has been huge. And the idea was to get the student athletes on and get them some recognition. And otherwise, how are you going to know the football team, you know, or the basketball team? And that has just been huge. And those guys, like I say, they're retiring now, but when we go to different events and ex-athletes show up, it amazes me that, you know, some kid from 25 years ago shows up and still gives those guys hugs and thanks them for being on, or the fact that they can call and say, like, can I get a copy of that, you know, Milford game from 1999? And more than likely we still have it here. That's really cool. Miller Chat, Robin Miller, she's another one. I mean, Robin's whole idea was to, in a sense, give a voice to the voiceless. And, you know, she's done a lot of issues for handicapped people and things of that nature, and has done a lot of good work. And she, too, I think, has announced that she's going to be stopping, too, after 25 years. So this is like a big year for us coming up, because it's like, you know, these people are all reaching their 25th year and kind of moving away from it. So we're going out of our way just to make sure that the community knows that, you know, it's always been volunteer driven. They're here because they want to be here. They're here because they're passionate about their cause, and this was their outlet. Yeah.
So, I mean, SMC has played a really important role, and the predecessor organization, SPAC, has played a really important role. And I think, you know, from my perspective, I look forward to finding the right evolution, because as cable evolves and technology changes, things are going to be different and funding sources may vary, but it's part of the fabric of our democratic local government, in my opinion. And I look forward to working with you, Mark, and others on your team to find the next path. As you know, we need different sources or different approaches to, because it's just so important to me and what it is that we're trying to do, and being a open and transparent local government. So
Yeah, and I think, too, for the residents, too, we've heard a lot over the years, like, people think it's taxpayer money. And we always try to educate them that, no, it's from the cable franchise fee. And as that starts to go away, so I think it's one of those things, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And I think people, in a sense, take it for granted a little bit, that, you know, government coverage will always be there. And that may not always be the case. So yes, I appreciate you saying we have to find a way to work together, and I do look forward to that conversation. And I will say, so I was looking up numbers earlier. So on the government side, like this year to date, we've already done 246 government programs, whether that's meeting coverage or, you know, a show like this, or Hannah Moore, Hannah Kane's show, Michael Moore's show. So in total, there's been over 500 pieces of content that have been aired here or created here this year, and about half of them are actually government related. So it's a big part of our operation now, and you know, we're proud of that, though. We love the relationship that we have with the town government.
You should be proud of it. And I've learned so much today, and how SMC and local government access cable in Shrewsbury has been leading the way and really is the best in the business. So we commend you for all that work, and
Thank you.
continuing to lead the way and set a standard for public access for the region and the country. So
Can I just take a minute to talk about our
course.
team?
Yeah, please
Because
do.
it really is a team approach. And so I'm saying I've been here since 98. I'm actually the new guy.
Okay.
So Lori Bergman has been here since 1987. She's our programming coordinator. So you may not actually know her or see her that much, but you know, for the government meetings to get programmed and put on the air, or the public stuff, Lori does that. Liz's role is rather undefined at times, because she's a Jill of all trades. And especially now, we have a much smaller staff than we used to, so we're all kind of doing other things. But Liz has been here since 96, and her started off as the educational access coordinator, so basically running the educational channel and coordinating all that. But now we've asked her to step up and help out on all three channels. So I feel like Liz and I, yes, my title is executive director, but in a lot of the other centers, the executive director is really more of, fundraiser, community kind of thing. We're all hands in, we're doing shows every day, and she's in here working with the public as much as I am. I'm on the road doing sports. We just really love the mission and do whatever it takes to make that happen.
Great. And I know it takes a core of part-time folks to come in and help.
We always
run
have
those meetings in person.
a great high school kids. So again, fortunate that we have this relationship with the high school where we ask the television program there, we want your best student. And every year they tell us who their best student, their best senior is going to be. And they always work for us. It's been a great relationship for 2 decades at least.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that takes us to the best segment, the favorite part of the show. I know you've been hopefully preparing for this. So this is a big, broad question, right? So what is the best cable or TV show? in your opinion? And you have to go first as the guest, and
Yeah, well,
Taylor might go.
I would.
Okay.
Planning board is my favorite. No, no, it really is actually. No, yeah. So as far as our content, I joke, but I do watch every government meeting there is. So I am a big fan of planning board, and I tell anyone, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but like the finance committee meetings that you do on the Saturday in March, like the Thursday and the Saturday, I think if you had the opportunity to only watch one meeting, that's the one to watch. Like I learn more. I mean, granted, that's like hours, right? All combined, it's like 12 hours. But I tell everyone, especially if they're running for office, like watch that meeting so you at least know. So yes, I think that's the best thing on television is that. But for myself, believe it or not, I don't watch as much TV as one might think. So if I do watch something, it has to be very well written, good acting. Not a huge fan of sitcoms other than Seinfeld. So for me, I would say, I don't know if you're familiar with Ricky Gervais. If you haven't seen Derek or Afterlife on Netflix, totally check it out. Derek is completely underrated. But for the most part, I love shows like The Wire, The Americans, Mad Men. So right now I'm on a Wire kick.
Okay.
So I know it's 20 years old, but I'm going to go with The Wire as being my favorite.
All right,
Finance
Taylor.
committee.
What's that?
Finance committee.
Finance committee. Wow.
No, I do. I do go home and I watch finance committee though. I don't. I've taken a break from watching select board meetings for a little bit since my leave, but I'll probably return to that eventually. I've just liked having my Tuesday nights back. Miss you all. My favorite TV show is probably X-Files. I rewatch that all the time, but like current like Netflixy show Haunting of Hill House is probably my favorite like limited series that has been on. I'll rewatch that all the time. It's like a really good story, but it's like horror, so like if you don't like horror, then maybe not.
Sure my
but
wife
the
watched
story is
that.
like really, really good and heartwarming.
Scary. Oh.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So I'll start with limited series. And my favorite all-time, hands down, single answer is Band of Brothers. Like that is
Good one.
That is my favorite. But I want to tie this back to public access somehow, and not limited series is Saturday Night Live. So tie in Wayne's World a little bit back into the fold. So Saturday Night Live, I just love.
Still?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm Weekend Update. Is the primary go to for me. But I just.
Yeah,
love it.
I DVR it, watch it every week.
Yep.
I think it gets a bad rap at times because I do think there has been brilliance since the 80s. Everyone goes back to the the 70s and 80s, and I'm like, man, during the 90s especially, the Will Ferrell era, but even some of the more modern stuff, I'm like, that show to me still knocks it out of the park.
They do. They really do. So, well, Mark, this has been a lot of fun. I learned probably the most from this episode than I have on any Town Manager download. So we appreciate your time and being willing to
thank you for having me.
Not only come on and talk with us, but to support the Town Manager download in all the ways that you do. So we appreciate the conversation. Just a reminder to anyone, if you have a question or a thought on an upcoming idea for a show, you can reach us at tmdownload@shrewsburyma.gov. So on behalf of Taylor Galusha, I'm Kevin Mizikar. Thank you for listening.